Hi, this is Brian Klug with AnandTech, and what we're looking at right now is the Motorola Droid Bionic on Verizon 4G LTE. So of course, for a while now we've been looking at all the Motorola devices and moreover all the Verizon 4G LTE devices. And up until now we've sort of been gated by single core performance. So this is the first time in the Bionic, well the Bionic is the first time we've actually been able to take a look at dual core and 4G LTE in the same package. So for a while that they've been mutually exclusive. You either can get single core with LTE or dual core with just standard EVDO connectivity. So really this is the first time we get both in one single package, and the Bionic is sort of the most anticipated device of the summer, at least until the Nexus Prime. So what we're going to do is just take a look at it and explore and see what there is to say. So on the front, of course, we have the 4.3-inch QHD display, which is of course RGBW, so we have a white 4th subpixel, and you can see that this is sort of eerily reminiscent of the Droid X2 already. It's got the same exact display. We have the sort of trademark chrome lip, which is sort of a style from the full-size droids. Up at the top we have the VGA front-facing camera, and of course the notification LED that's blinking green, probably because there's some email or something. So I know the notification LED is a big deal for some people, so it's here. And then on the bottom we have the normal capacitive buttons and a microphone. So really there's not too much to talk about that's out of the ordinary. It's sort of a safe design on the front. When you get to this side you can see the micro USB port, HDMI, that's pretty much standard fare. You can see they jut out a little bit, which is kind of interesting. This is no doubt to accommodate the laptop dock, which unfortunately we don't have, but that's sort of the same thing we've seen before. From this angle you can also really get a feel for that, the sort of bulge in the top part that is sort of a design language motif that the Droid X and the Droid X2 had. So that's one of those things that for me really makes this feel like one of those devices. At the top you have the power lock button and then headset jack, so that's pretty standard fare. Nothing out of the ordinary there. Of course, a little place for you to jam your thumb in and peel the battery cover off. On this side you got the volume rocker. Down at the bottom there's nothing, and it's all sort of lipped in this chrome, which is pretty standard for Motorola devices. If you go to the back you can see the 8 megapixel rear facing camera, single LED flash, and all the usual assortment of microphones. You have one down here for stereo audio recording and another one up here for noise cancellation when in phone calls. So none of that is out of the ordinary at all. If you pop the back cover off, which is again just done by doing that, you can see the battery, which is a 6.6 watt-hour battery that's marked 3.8 volts, which is kind of interesting, so a bit above the normal 3.7 that you see. And I would encourage you to read the review for more of my thoughts on that. You can see it's marked 6.6 watt-hours. So that's pretty beefy. Of course the Atrix was like 7.1 watt-hours. I feel like they're limited by size. This is a pretty thin battery. You can see right here the micro SD card slot and SIM slot. Sort of an interesting micro SD arrangement. It's held in with just friction here, and of course this piece of plastic. And it stays in place. It's just kind of something weird that I've never seen before. So if we pop that back in, let's talk about the battery a little bit more. So I did something rather interesting for the Bionic review, and I went ahead and purchased the extended battery, which is right here. And of course the extended battery comes with the larger size battery door to accommodate that. So you can see here, it's thicker. It adds a considerable amount of thickness. The battery itself is thicker as well. If we actually measure this thing, let's see, it's around 8 millimeters thick. So that's interesting. Yeah, 8.07, 8.39, 8.3. You can hear it turning on. 8.17. I'm gonna yank this one out. I know that makes people feel weird, but it's okay with these phones. So really the extended battery is about double thickness, and that's about what you'd expect. And again, capacity goes from 6.6 watt-hours up to 10.2 on the extended battery. And what's interesting about the extended battery is that it's 3.7 volts nominal. So they're not doing any of the interesting overvolting here. They give you the normal voltage. So of course when fully charged that works out to 4.3 volts here and 4.2 volts on the extended battery. And that's sort of par, the extended battery. That's what everybody else uses. So I mean, there's no getting around the fact that the Droid, you know, the Motorola Droid Bionic isn't the thinnest device on the planet. You know, if we measured this, let's take a look. Get it here. 11.07. I believe the actual spec is like 10.99. So obviously it's a little bit, you know, it's pretty close. I'd buy that. Yeah, sure. These aren't the world's best calipers, so you know, just go with like whatever is cheapest on Amazon. You know, 13.1 up at the top. So, you know, I measured this before, and really the thinnest point on this other, on the extended battery, is about the same as the thickest point with the standard battery. So if we come back here, you know, we pop this one in. Let's just take a look at what this looks like. Here we go. So now if you measure this one, let's see how much thicker we get. See, sometimes it doesn't return to 0 exactly. About 15, 15.4, 15 point... If I, you know, there's a little bit of flex, so when I push on this, it kind of changes a little bit. But, so yeah, it goes up to like 15 millimeters. You know, and then over here it's sort of the same. This part doesn't change, it's still around 13. So, I mean, it's not going to win any awards for world's thinnest phone, but with the extended battery, you get considerably more battery life. You know, I check out the review for the actual specific numbers, but you can see that it does add to the profile. One of the interesting things, of course, is this sort of like this beveled edge that goes all the way around, and it gives it a pretty good in-hand feel, you know. It definitely grips the hand nicely. With the extended battery a little bit more. You know, there's something a little interesting. This is kind of, you know, like a deep little hole to get to the speakerphone. This area up here actually doesn't do anything. So it looks like a speaker grill, but it actually serves no purpose. It's just kind of decorative. And this camera is essentially the same that we've seen on the Motorola Droid 3. So again, this phone, for me, feels a lot like what you'd get if you took a Droid 3, you removed the keyboard, you added the Droid X2 display, and you added 4G LTE connectivity. So now I'm powering up the Bionic, and let's talk a little bit more about that 4G LTE connectivity. So just like the other Motorola droids on Verizon, 3G EVDO and 1X are supplied by a Qualcomm MDM 6600, which is very standard these days. You know, again, like basically all the Motorola devices use those. And then 4G connectivity is supplied by a Motorola LTE baseband that's codenamed Wrigley. And unfortunately, that's about all there is to say about it. There's really no other official information on the Motorola LTE baseband. I believe it's Category 2, so all the other, you know, pretty much all the other LTE basebands are Category 3. But, you know, it's hard to be exactly certain. I'm just going off of what config files I can find inside the device. So you can see boot up is pretty speedy there. I only had it on for like a couple seconds before I started this segment. So you can see again, this is sort of like the same exact, you know, version of MotoBlur that we saw on the Droid 3. You know, you have this home screen arrangement that's sort of animated in 3D, and it's very fluid, admittedly, and you know, it isn't standard, it isn't always perfect, but it's not bad. This is the MotoBlur experience. So then you get the application launcher, you know, and you get this, the same exact thing. You scroll left to right instead of up and down, and it's paginated. So that's pretty standard. I think that's really what people like to talk about when they talk about UI skins. You know, there are widgets too. I don't really use any of the Motorola widgets, but you can add them. You know, oops, you can see them right here, widgets. So yeah, there's the Motorola widgets. You know, I've installed stuff too, so some of these aren't what comes preloaded necessarily. But yeah, that gives you a pretty good feel. The camera application is again literally exactly what we saw on the Droid 3. It's sometimes a little bit finicky, you know, it's not perfect. Inside here you only get, see, sometimes the UI is a little bit finicky. You get two options for still photos. You can shoot 6 megapixel widescreen, which matches the display aspect ratio, or you can do 8 megapixel full screen, which matches the actual sensor aspect ratio. So for most stuff I'd leave it on 8 megapixel. If you come into video mode, you can shoot 1080p, high profile at 15 megabits. So this is pretty much some of the best video recording that we've seen. And it's second only to the Exynos series phones, which is of course Galaxy S2. And those shoot 17 megabits, but here we can shoot 15 high profile. And basically for all intents and purposes, this is the same quality that you're going to get. and it does use those high profile features. So what else is there to talk about? I think the other things that are interesting are how 4G LTE works on here. Inside wireless and networks down at the bottom, inside mobile networks, you can switch network modes between CDMA and LTE or CDMA only, and hopefully you can see those. So I usually look for on devices whether there's a mode to do LTE only. Unfortunately, there's no such mode here. You know, that's something I really don't come into that often, and it's a little bit frustrating because, you know, you don't want the device to hand off to EVDO if you know you're in an area that has good LTE connectivity. But for the most part, I've found the Bionic to be very stable, and it doesn't hop back and forth a lot, so you can leave this by default just fine, and for, you know, basically all the time it works just great. Up at the top you can see we are on 4G LTE here. We can run a speed test and show just how fast that is. I'm in my office and signal isn't super great, and more on that in a second, but it does give a pretty good feel for how things are. So if we go for it, hopefully we'll see how fast this can go. I've seen speed tests up to like 38 megabits. You need really good SINR for that to happen. You know, in the review we talk about average, and I believe average is still around 15. I haven't run the latest numbers as of shooting this video, but you know, it's extremely fast, and this is way faster than you're gonna get anything close on EVDO. So right there we got like 8.7 and then 7 up. So that's really good. So of course the nice thing about the Bionic is that it actually does report signal strength based on a combination of signal strength and the SNR. So really it uses the channel quality indicator, which is great. As a result, you aren't sort of led to like false expectations when you're trying to do things on LTE. And lastly, I just want to make it clear that yeah, the Bionic can do voice and data at the same time on LTE, just like all the other devices. It can't do voice and data when connected to 3G EVDO. As of right now, only the Thunderbolt can, and that's still the same. So if we're placing a call right now, and you can see it's working, and we can go browse the AnandTech homepage. Let's give that a shot. So I'm using the gingerbread keyboard here, but the Bionic comes preloaded with the Motorola multi-touch keyboard and swipe. So you can see that works just fine. You know, and it, just like every other LTE device, because you have one baseband tuning 1X and one other one tuning LTE, they're sort of separate, and you know, you can transact data at the same time. And it does reduce the TX power of the LTE connections so that you don't exceed the specific absorption rate, which would be illegal. And but that's not something you have to worry about. So now I know one thing that a lot of people have been wanting to see is how actual page loading performance compares on 3G EVDO to 4G LTE. So what I've done is load the same page on 4G LTE and EVDO in the same place. So of course signal is a little bit different on each network, you know, just purely as a function of propagation varying with frequency. But I'm going to hit go and then edit in the other clip alongside it, and we'll see what happens and which loads first. So here we go. And of course all the caches and stuff have been cleared on both of these runs. So obviously there's a pretty big difference in performance between the Bionic on 4G LTE and EVDO, and it's pretty substantial when loading those flash assets at the very end. So I think that's a pretty good tour of the Motorola Droid Bionic. Thanks again for watching.